Going on, everybody? My name is Ryan Lamar. I'm the host of the Youth Leaders in Wealth Management podcast. Today, I'm joined by Evan Drury. Evan is a Montclair State University alumni and currently a financial advisor with U.S. Financial Services. How are you doing, Evan?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on the show.
Appreciate it. I really appreciate you coming on. So I wanted to get started by asking you a little bit about your journey through Montclair State University or Montclair State University. So how did you go about finding a career after you graduated from the school?
Well, why don't we take it back a step? Because what year are you in school again?
So you going into my senior year.
Going into your senior year. Okay. So I actually switched paths once or twice. So I was starting off in business, then I switched over to computer science, then I switched back to business. There might have been, one other switch, a minor foray into, potential law school. But I went through a couple of different things, which led to me finding a job out of school in finance. And there's even marketing in there. I experimented with a couple of different things, and I actually got internships while I was in school, paid internships, because that was important to me. I didn't want to work for free and not have gas money. I did a number of different jobs while I was at school. I was an EMT, I was a bartender, and also that marketing job. But I just figured out through this process what I really wanted to do before I got out of school. And I find that it's really difficult to understand what's available to you outside of school. Normally, it's a simple Google search will tell you 3 different things you can become in, let's say, finance. So you really got to try to get out there and try to understand how many different avenues you really have and how many jobs are really available to you. And I would say one of the best things I did in school was probably bartending, with the focus on how am I going to find the best path for me right out of school. And I say bartending, it wasn't just at any bar. I worked at a country club type bar so that I could meet a lot of professionals in all sorts of business. And I made fake business cards when I was in school so I could pass it out to anyone I was serving a drink to and had a good conversation with that said, future financial professional. I have no idea. But the main point of finding this bar job was to build a network, because I didn't have a network in finance or business, or at least I didn't think I had one. I probably had a little bit more than I realized at the time, but I wanted to build my own. From that bar job, I actually was able to find someone that would take my resume to the HR department instead of just, applying online and hoping, which I remember those times. It was just ridiculous. You would just automatically submit your resume to on Indeed, or at the time monster.com was big. And then you get a whole bunch of rejections, or you get interviews, but the interviews you get oftentimes would be subpar for what you would want to do right out of college, let's say. So I'd say the bartending job was great, but the main point, because not everyone can or wants to be a bartender, is just build the network as soon as possible. So you're going into your senior year. If you don't want to be a bartender, or you have a different job, or you don't want to work late nights or weekends, that's fine. How else can you build a network? Well, you can go to Chamber of Commerce events. You can go to meetings for these meetup groups, LaTip, and even meetup.com has meetup groups, or even LinkedIn, like how we connected. Just start having conversations with people. I think LinkedIn's far better than all of those. Start having conversations with people and reach out in the DMs, and they might just come on your show and share their expertise or share their path. And that's probably the best way to go today, to be honest with you. And I wish I had that back then, but the bar worked really well for me. So the principle there, though, is just build that network.
Yeah, it's exactly what I've been doing, right? So LinkedIn has been a huge way for me to network and connect with people. So, I mean, obviously that's how I met you. I've met a lot of people in that way, being able to just show who I am right away. It's a profile, and kind of be able to display my resume in the sense that like you have the little headline of who you are and a picture has been great. I've met a lot of people that way, and I also am a bartender at a similar spot, a yacht club. The
Hmm.
business card name, the business card idea was actually is really good. I might have to steal that from you, but
YLWM, man.
it's definitely unique. I've never heard of that one before. And the yacht club has been great for making connections, certainly. The guy I worked for last summer, my internship was actually a member there. So I
Hmm.
used that in a good way. And, part of what youth leaders does is show people that how to network, and that networking is so important. Like you said, if you just apply online, the most likely it's going to be a dead resume, right? You kind of need someone to walk that resume through a door to really get an opportunity.
Well,
Most
also
of the
just one more thing on that really quick. Just I don't mean to cut you off, but you also, when you get to know somebody that you might be working for, you get to ask questions about the company beforehand, before you spend time on the interview, or you really, it's hard to know what a company's like until you get inside of it. And if you meet this person, and get to do an internship well beforehand, or you just get to ask them questions before they even know you're interested, you really get to have a much better understanding of what they do, what you like, what you don't like, without having to go through, right, that interview process, and that resume, black hole that is the Indeeds and the Monsters of the world. And you just, even if you get a hit, you don't know, is this something I want to even do? So yeah, so great idea on the yacht club too.
Yeah, like you said, you don't even know if that's exactly what you want to do, but it's a good way to experiment, right? When I first started really reaching out to people on LinkedIn and figuring out where I wanted to go, it opened my eyes so much to the possible opportunities within the finance space. Um, I was kind of being pushed towards that like traditional investment banking route, as if that was kind of the only spot to go at the moment. And as I kind of got more in tune with how the industry works and what the opportunities were, that's kind of how I got pushed towards the financial advising side. I knew I wanted to be in front of people and be able to give advice and help people make smart decisions. And something like investment banking just wasn't for me in that sense, or the private equities or the sales and trading, just not in the way that I wanted to do my career. And I credit talking to people like you, Evan, that has helped me go down that path towards something that I feel like I actually want to do. And that's been the biggest outcome of talking to all these people, is really learning, honing in on what you want to do, and not having to be in a spot for a year or two to know, oh, I hate this. And there's always a chance that there's something that you pick that happens. I mean, that's life. But I feel like I've narrowed it down more by talking to people than I would have just hopping into an experience.
Well, and that's great. I'm glad to hear that. And also just know that you can make a shift 10 years, 20 years down the road, as long as you're building your skills. You'll have more opportunities available to you than you realize. And so even, that 1 to 2 year mark isn't a big deal. And you could say you might even like what you're doing 10 to 20 years down the road, but also there might be new opportunities that are really exciting for you. And you just say, well, I've built up a lot of skills, and I just want to make a shift. And that's fine too. But a lot easier once you've built those skills, and found something that you enjoy for an extended time period. So I'm glad it's been helpful.
Yeah, it definitely has been. So I appreciate that. And kind of transitioning, I want to know what was your time like after you graduated? I know you were in an operations role for a little bit. So how did
Mhm.
the operations role go, and then how did you transition into financial advising?
So the operations role was not by choice. It was anything to get my foot in the door with a big financial company. And I would say that also, it's not easy to start out being a financial advisor, but it's especially not easy or even available right after 2008. So around that time and a few years after, there was just either no availability, or with a company that I didn't want to go to, or the support just wasn't there in a way that made sense to me. So and also I was trying to get on with a junior advisor type role, right? So that I would have support, get a lay of the land before I just jumped headfirst into the business. And also was really, there were two options available to me at the time: a junior advisor type role and the operations role. Well, the junior advisor role that I was interviewing for just went away. All of a sudden, I had been interviewing for a while for it, and I go, what happened? And apparently, I found this out later. A child of a client actually applied months after me, and they won out because, well, child of a client takes a lot of priority. And I later became great friends with the guy. So it is what it is. I didn't have any control over. He was great too, but it actually worked out in my favor. Just get my foot in the door, saying, "Hey, I don't care. I'll learn the business from the ground up." And while he was focused on one specific set of the business, I was able to work with every advisor in a huge office. There was over 100, closer to 200 advisors within the offices connected to this office. And I could actually be in that junior advisor role, but just with many, many, many more people. So I was involved with, people focused on options, stocks, bonds. Some people just had specific focuses in their business, or AUM. Some people also, less back in the day, but some people were focused on planning. So I got to see a huge, broad spectrum of what the business really meant and how different people approached being successful and managing clients' lives and bettering their lives. And I would say that what I did in that role to kind of increase my knowledge exponentially relative to just doing the job and going home is I would be a problem solver. And if I was going to solve your problems, then I just asked, hey, can I get 10, 15 minutes of your time? Because everyone has 10, 15 minutes, especially if you solve a major problem for them. And so I would solve the problem and say, hey, can I get 10, 15 minutes? I want to know how you became successful or how you run a successful practice. And funny enough, a lot of people will give you more than 10, 15 minutes if you ask about them, because everyone knows their story. It's the easiest story for them to tell. And a lot of people like telling it, especially the good times. And sometimes they'll share the bad times with you too, but it's the success arc, right? So I knew every single advisor there fairly well to really well. And there was a potential for me to stay on there and join one of their teams and have my career grow from there. And I did end up, shifting to a team, but I saw that they really weren't doing planning. And there was a lot in my mind that was missing. So while I shifted over to a new team out of the operations role, I was also speaking to people outside of the company who were doing more in finance that just made sense to me. I was looking at the next 10 years in finance, and I go, most people are doing trading or managing portfolios, assets under management, but there's got to be something more, because where is your competitive advantage? And so I found financial planners who were doing all of that and way more. And not to say that everyone at the companies that I worked at prior, not that everyone didn't do this, but it just, you don't know someone's business again till you get into it. And there's subsets within the business. Every advisor runs their business their own way. And so I said the majority of people over at the old company don't seem to be doing financial planning. But looking into the future, I think that's a way to really separate yourself. It's a better way to serve the clients. And so I interviewed with people, in some cases for 2 years, not interviewed, but built the relationship. So when it was time to move, I had already had a relationship for years with financial planners outside this business. So I'm screwing up my timelines a bit. I'm trying to correct here. But I had already had relationships with people outside of the first business I was a part of, or the second practice I was a part of. And I could switch very quickly, knowing that, all right, the place that I landed, the team that I landed on, it's not going to be a good fit. I don't see a future here for a number of reasons. And then I shifted over to U.S. financial services fairly quickly, and I've been here. It'll be 10 years in September. So made the switch. I was happy with the switch. There was a lot of learning, even aside from working in the prior company for about 4 years. But it's great industry. It's great to be in planning. I feel you can help clients a lot more than just asset allocation management. And it's a business where you never really stop learning. But I know I'm going beyond the scope of the question here, so I don't want to screw up your other questions.
No problem. Yeah, so I like the idea of planning as well, right? Being able to provide a more comprehensive guide to the entirety of what finances are outside of assets management, right? So if you're just doing investment management, you're missing out on estate planning, insurance needs, different types of tax planning, right? So comprehensive financial planners can kind of take that all into the vision and not necessarily be bound by the assets that they're managing, right? So actual financial plans, flat fees for things like that, maybe quarterly, yearly engagements is going to. It seems to me that that's going to be rising in popularity over the next 10 years, as it has over the last 10, as they developed more and more. So when you go about making a financial plan now, like how does that process go with the client? What is some of the major pieces that you're looking for when it comes to a plan?
So first off, whenever you're doing financial planning, there's nothing that's cookie cutter. So you have to understand the person, the family on their level. Right. It's not just here's our generic portfolio for moderate investors, growth investors, or your age minus a number, and here's what you get. You have to gather a lot of information. So the initial process we call the exploration study, and we request a lot of information, and then we put together an analysis based on the snapshot of where you are today. How does your estate look? What's your insurance look like? How are your investments currently allocated? Taxes. Do you have a tax return you can send us? We try to understand the initial picture. From the exploration study, then we get into financial planning and understanding cash flow. So what are you saving at the end of each month, each year, if anything? And what can we, if you do have a surplus, what can we do with that? And how can we maximize your situation? And when it comes to long-term planning, because the cash flow and the financial planning aspects start with that snapshot, start with the year we're looking at today. But then how does that look over your lifetime? So if you're looking at taxes, you don't want to just look at how do I reduce my taxes for next April? You want to look at the lifetime tax plan and say, how can I really add value to this client and reduce their taxes over a lifetime? Are they in a high tax bracket? Should I say maybe it might make more sense? Well, it definitely makes more sense if they're in a high tax bracket to not do Roth contributions now and actually do traditional contributions, but then maybe we do Roth conversions later on down the road if there are times when there are low income years, or maybe they decide to take a year off if they're really well off and they sold a business and they're going to start another business in a couple of years. I know I'm getting somewhat specific here, but the point is you're trying to add value over someone's life, not just for a year. And when you consider someone's entire life, you're trying to focus on the short term. Here's the year that influences the long-term projections. Because if I show someone a long-term projection, right, that snapshot of today is projected out throughout someone's life expectancy. Well, projections aren't reality unless you work to make them so, and you don't have full control over projections. So what you try to do is you definitely have to get the current year or the present as accurate as possible, and mix in strategies that make sense for that person in the best possible way. but then you also have to work every single year, check in every single year to implement these long-term plans that consider, like I said before, the tax consideration on we're making a decision today on investing in traditional because it makes more sense with regards to the tax bracket. But then we might make a decision 5-10 years down the road that considers changes in your life. And we can put that into a plan if we know the time frame. Sometimes we have to make assumptions, but I would say just to summarize this point, because I think there's a lot of points to be made on someone's life. Is just everyone's different. You can't approach any plan cookie cutter. You have to use all the tools available to you, like investments, like life insurance, estate planning, tax planning, to complement the whole plan so that everything's working together in the short term and the long term. And you have to evaluate on the short term consistently to make the long term projections somewhat of reality, because you can't guarantee projections based on, someone's life can change drastically in 5 years. You don't know, higher income, lower income, but at least from where we start, we can be somewhat accurate. We can have somewhat of an understanding of what makes sense. And then again, adjust as things change. But that's kind of the best way to sum it up, because everything in financial planning depends on the person and the situation, and then those changes and how you adjust to them.
Yeah, it's completely relative to each person's situation. I really am like with my internship this summer, I've had some experience looking into financial plans and doing and just understanding mock financial plans when I look at them online. And it's so interesting to me to see different people's situations and how a comprehensive planner can plan for different scenarios and being able to maximize certain objectives, in the sense, someone that's more oriented for growth or more oriented for savings and security, more conservative, different approaches based on that when it comes to where we're moving the money, how we're placing assets in certain baskets, right? So I appreciate the insight on that. I kind of wanted to get a little bit into some characteristics. What are some characteristics that you feel like are important for becoming a successful financial advisor?
Well, you have to be a good communicator. I call it being an effective translator, because a lot of the financial jargon can be like another language to somebody. So you have to translate that into just regular words. No matter how wealthy or successful the person is, they're wealthy and successful in their own domain. So you have to, and I would never call it dumbing it down, because they're not dumb people. So so that's another part of just communication. And I've heard it referenced in that way before. That's why I bring it up. But you have to just speak to them in a way that they can understand the process, and especially with complex products, but even in the most mundane or simple things that you think everyone should know, like what does RMD mean, right? I had someone ask that of me the other day, and I forgot to just say required minimum distribution. I said RMD, and that doesn't mean they're any less intelligent than the next person. They're very intelligent, but they just don't know the jargon. And so we shouldn't speak to them with jargon. We should speak to them in plain terms and then summarize it for them after the meeting in an email, so that everyone's on the same page and you know what you talked about the last time. So I would say communication is critical, and persistence in terms of follow-up and how you go about saving and continuing to keep that communication up, because you could be a great communicator in the moment and terrible in your follow-up or your allocation of that information. So if I talk to a client 3 months ago, I'm not going to remember that conversation exactly, and they also might not be on top of things themselves, and they might want me to be that point person that schedules follow-ups again. Said, hey, you were going to do this 3 months ago, or you were going to do these 5 items, and this is, key to creating, greater success or maximizing your potential. So you have to be persistent in your follow-up and your overall allocation of the whole process. So starting with being that good communicator, but then saving that communication and being very organized would be the third characteristic that goes along and complements the other two.
So what have you done to become a better communicator over time? Is it just experience, or have you branched out to other aspects?
That's a good question. I would say experience. You can't deny that experience helps, because you will get feedback very quickly if what you said was helpful or not. And so you can adjust over time. I would say I read a lot. Or I wouldn't say it's not read. I listen to audiobooks on communication and psychology just to be a better communicator myself. And I screw up in my communication still. I'm not perfect, but I try to get better every day. And whether it be listening to audiobooks or YouTube is just so good now in terms of who you have access to and what you have access to. So if you want to be a better communicator, you could Google anything. There's a guy called Cal Fussman, and he is an excellent storyteller. Have you ever heard of this guy?
Yeah, but I'm definitely going to check on that. Cal Fussman?
Fussman, yeah. He's an excellent storyteller, but he is a renowned question asker because he used to work for, I believe, the New Yorker, and he interviewed some unbelievable people and was able to get additional time with people like heads of state, Mikhail Gorbachev, to name one big one, and Muhammad Ali, to name another. So if you're able as a reporter to gain additional time with a high level person, well, then I go, okay, I need to know how you ask questions or why you ask the questions. So I would say, aside from experience, reading is good, but YouTube has been amazing for not stealing questions necessarily, but understanding why someone asked what they asked. And then from better questions, I think you're able to communicate with people in a more effective way, because you're actually trying much harder to understand them than trying to say something better, from yourself. That'll be a lot easier than truly understanding what's going on in someone's mind. So better question asking and slowing down. I would say, in addition to that, slowing down, not really worrying so much about what you're going to say, letting someone else speak for the majority of the time is very powerful, because we all want to share our expertise and say, oh, we know this, that, and the other thing. We're, look how great we are compared to our competitors. They're not going to see that if you don't slow down, let them talk, ask a better question, and then you do have to say something that's worthwhile. If you're going to split it up with the 80-20 rule, let them speak 80% of the time to your 20%, you do have to say something worthwhile, but you'll have a better idea of what's really going to resonate with them if you let them do 80% of the talking and you used the best possible questions. So that's what I did, and that's my takeaway.
Yeah, it really seems like questions are the gateways into great answers. So great questions can get to great answers, right? And what I do here, I try to refine every single time I have someone on or I have a networking call, just get better at question asking. And that's been something that's been super important to my development, understanding how to ask better questions. So definitely going to check out Cal Fussman and see how he does it, because to be able to communicate and get extra time with Mikhail Gorbachev as well as Muhammad Ali is no normal feat, right? So I appreciate you bringing him to my attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Just remind me, I might have the link saved somewhere to a good speech. So just send me a DM and I'll get back to you.
Perfect. I appreciate that. And then I kind of wanted to ask a final question here. You have hindsight, you have experience, things that people my age just don't have, the wisdom of having gone through something. So having kind of developed this career over the last decade or so, what is some advice for the next generation of financial advisors?
Hmm. So you mean specifically people that want to not just be planners, but be client facing, um, just advice in general, or do you have something specific?
Yeah, so let me open it up a little bit more to like people that are interested in the financial planning, financial advising fields, whether that be client facing, financial planning, behind the scenes, paraplanners. Going into this industry, what would your advice be?
Same thing as what we talked about a little while ago on building your network. Never stop building your network, even if you love your job and your company, because you never know how your network could benefit you. And even if it's not to say that you're leaving your company at one point, maybe you find that you're a great advisor, but you need you need to hire a junior advisor, right? Or you're a solo advisor and you want to hire someone to come on and be a partner, not necessarily hire, but you want to partner with somebody. I would say that if you expand your network, not only from an advisor perspective, but you can have conversations with estate attorneys, CPAs, any sort of attorney, really, not just estate attorneys, but you can build out a network of people that can help you service your clients in the best way possible and create your own team essentially, or build out that team so that clients that come to you, well, now you have relationships with all these people that you vetted in all different domains that can you trust, and you can send your clients to them knowing that they'll get good service, and then your recommendations mean more, and also your clients feel better served, because if they have a question that's not necessarily something that you can even comment on, right? Or you can't complete yourself. Like I can't write a will myself, but I have an estate attorney that I can go say, hey, can you meet with my client? I really believe they need a will refresh, or they need powers of attorney in addition to their will. Well, you're almost offering another service by not having them have to go through Google and just find someone and hope, right? And not all estate CPAs or financial advisors are created equal. So you want to remove the time that they spend just searching for answers. And you can do that even if it's outside of your field of expertise. That's one. In terms of financial planning, getting into the business, build your network now and never stop building. Start putting content online that shows you're interested in finance and show you've researched some things, because even though you're not in the business, you can still create an understanding for yourself and for others. You'll learn a whole lot by writing. You'll learn far more than most just by writing down a topic that you're interested in. And you could just go to investopedia.com and Smart Asset and sites like that to research topics that you're interested in and start to teach yourself about certain aspects of the business. So write, engage, build that network, start, putting out your understanding of finance, your thoughts, your creative ideas, and really make sure you do your research so you're putting out something that's correct. And then from there, don't stop. Create something consistently that you can put yourself out there on in this field. And you'll be able to show this to future employers, because you're creating a catalog, much like an artist creates a catalog before they join a design firm, let's say. So with that, I think that that's a great way to go about it for new people. Know that you're never stuck if you get into something that you don't like. Just continue to build your skills in both communication and also the financial realm, because that'll take you so far if you just keep building your skills. And writing will help immensely with that. It'll help retention. It'll help with understanding it and building skills far beyond just finding a good mentor, which is hard to do. So you can kind of create your own mentor system by finding people online and then learning from them and then writing down and learning about these topics yourself. Okay.
Perfect. Evan, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate everything that you've laid out for us here. I would love to have you back on in some time, but for now, I'll leave your LinkedIn in the description of the video, and anything you want to promote and throw out there, I'd be more than happy to share with the group.
I'd say LinkedIn and Twitter. So I'll DM you my Twitter. I think that LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube are all great platforms. YouTube's coming soon. I really need to get on that, but content creation takes a long time. So for now, find, when I say write online, find what you like. Do videos, do LinkedIn, do Twitter. Start with one, and then branch out from there as you figure out what you like, what you don't like. All right. But thanks for your
Perfect.
time. I really appreciate the
Thank you. All right. You have a good one, Evan. Thank you.